Hi folks, this is Lenny DellaRocca and Michael Mackin-O'Mara with Catherine Esposito Prescott, who will be reading at the Miami Book Fair come this November. Hello Catherine, thanks for being here.
Hello Michael, thanks for having me.
Your new book is Maria Sings, and this is from Dancing Girl Press. And can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Sure. Maria Sings is essentially about a main character named Maria, and Maria is diagnosed with breast cancer. So it follows her journey from diagnosis to healing, and at the same time, Maria becomes an every woman type of figure in the book. So any one of us could be Maria at any point in time.
I noticed in reading through it that there are some poems that are ekphrastic, some are found poems. Can you talk a little bit about how you go about finding that for a collection?
Sure, I mean, I'd love to. I think for me, writing is a lot about play, and ekphrastic poems really help me think about art in a new way, and also just as a place to start writing from. So sometimes if I'm stuck, I'll look at art, and I'll find a poem that, a painting rather, that resonates. And I'll see if I can find some meaning from that. So I found lately I've connected to a lot of work by Helen Frankenthaler, the American abstract painter from early in the 19th.
I was going to say,
early 20th century.
Yes. I was just looking at some of her work the other day, in fact, online, I think it was.
Okay, and so sometimes I'll do that, or sometimes I'll assign myself a villanelle or a sonnet. Or, found poem, but it's all about play for me.
Did you, in assembling this collection, I suppose there probably were other poems, more poems than this that you weeded some out to get down to these. Do you have a process in a specific way of doing that? Or do you have friends or colleagues helping you decide which ones go in, or an editor, or how does that work for you?
That's a great question. It's a long and complicated and somewhat mysterious process, I think. Maybe sometimes I take too many out that could possibly go in. I think I'm really hard on my poems. Obviously I put in any that are accepted to journals, but I'll at the same time forget to send others to journals. So it's part what's been published and part just what resonates with the collection and what might balance it out. But of course, for every poem you see in the collection, there are probably 5 others that didn't make it. So maybe part of my process should be to go back and find those and see if there's something worth saving there.
Sure. Now, the book is Maria Sings. And the first poem in the book, Lessons from a South Beach Fairy Tale, I know that there's a reference to a hurricane in there, because we just had Hurricane Maria, so this kind of was like a confluence of things that just happened with this.
A bizarre confluence. When I first moved to Miami, it felt like every 4th or 5th woman I met was named Maria. So there were Marias everywhere, and Marias lived in penthouses, Marias owned businesses, Marias cleaned houses. Marias did everything through all socioeconomic levels. So that first poem references the first Maria, who I didn't call Maria, and it just so happens that it references a hurricane, and it just so happens we just had Hurricane Maria.
It was amazing when I read that. I was like, oh my God.
Oh my
goodness. Did you read the poem?
Sure, I'd love to. Lessons from a South Beach Fairy Tale. Where we live, it is not so much boy meets girl, as girl meets man, who commands her to make a child, find a nanny, and get her nails done, then her nose, then her boobs, to tighten her body like a corset, make her bones small for wind to whistle through. Shrink wrapped in heels, she wouldn't survive a steak dinner, let alone a Category 1 hurricane. But she loves his yacht and his view. Did she mention the view? How you can see the curve where ocean and sky meet? Just as it must have looked to the first explorers, those men in search of gold and youth, curved and not at all flat.
Wow. That is very much a woman's poem, a female perspective for sure, which is segues into this. We were just talking about the project that you and Jen Karetnik are working on. Let's talk a little bit about
Oh,
that.
yes. So, right. Jen Karetnik and I started a not-for-profit called SWIM, an acronym for Supporting Women Writers in Miami. And through the not-for-profit, we started to produce a reading series in conjunction with the Betsy Hotel, who's hosting not only the reading series, but also the visiting writers. And then we also rolled out a digital publishing platform called Swim Every Day, where we publish one poem per day by a woman or woman-identifying author. And it's been fantastic. We've received such great work, and what we're finding is that women are sending us the poems that maybe have been rejected by younger or male editors just because the subject matter might not resonate.
Sure.
Even if the poem is fantastic,
Yeah.
there might not be an emotional entry.
Yeah, that's very interesting. You getting any local women poets sending stuff in, I suppose?
Many,
Yeah, good.
many locals,
Spe-
which is great.
Speaking of local, you're going to be at the Miami Book Fair when? What's the date time?
I'm reading on Saturday, which I believe is the 19th
The 19th, I think, yeah.
of November at 4 p.m.
Okay, at one of the buildings, of course, and it'll
I
probably
think
be on
it's
one of the...
building 6 maybe, but
Okay.
hopefully that'll be in the
They
schedule.
hand out the the whole roster of who's where. I hope to get to see you there.
Oh, I hope so too.
Um,
I'm sure you'll be plenty busy.
Well, we'll see what happens. I was telling you before, we're hoping to schedule some interviews with some of the poets that are coming, and we'll see, what kind of time we have when we're not doing the interviews. You live in Miami, and you mentioned before when you came down to Miami. How long have you been in Miami? Where are you from originally?
So I'm from New York originally.
Okay.
I grew up on Long Island, and I studied in Baltimore, studied in Europe, came back to New York, did my graduate studies at NYU, and then
Okay.
moved down to Miami for a teaching job. And my then boyfriend at the time had been traveling to Miami,
Okay.
now husband, about every 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
So we realized 70% of his clients were down here. And then I got a teaching job at Miami-Dade College, which was then Miami-Dade Community College.
Okay, right.
So it's a full-time teaching gig,
Wow.
tenure track, and
Yeah.
I jumped.
Sure.
Mhm.
How long you down here now?
So we moved down in 2001, so we're going
Okay.
on, right,
16, 17 years,
17
17
years.
years.
Yeah, longer
Um,
than anticipated. I didn't think we'd be here for longer than maybe 2 years tops.
So you came down just in time. A few years later we had 3 hurricanes in a row,
We did.
and now Irma.
I know,
right.
back in 2005, I had a 2-year-old and a newborn
Wow.
at the time.
Yeah.
And we didn't have hurricane impact windows. And I think that's about when I wrote that first poem.
So how long have you been writing poetry?
I've been writing poetry on and off since probably I was 16.
Okay.
It started in high school.
And you're 20 now, so.
I'm 20 now, so just a few
been
years. But still learning. I feel like I'm still 20.
Well, don't we all, right? I mean, are you reading any poetry now, or any other, or fiction, or what are you reading, and who's it by? And
I'm always reading.
Yeah.
I usually have about 3 or 4 books
uh-huh.
on my nightstand, and that's when I read. I just finished Olio by Tahimba Jess,
Okay.
which is an incredibly expansive work.
Yeah.
And sonnet rich, and history rich, and perspective rich.
Right.
So I learned a lot, and I also just finished a chapbook by a colleague of mine, Susan Brennan, called Blue
Okay.
Sirens, also published by Dancing Girl.
Oh, is
which
that
was
right?
Fantastic, and
Yeah.
also about a cancer.
Okay.
We're surrounded by it, and it's in our consciousness.
Yeah, it sure is.
And I just started Nicole Krauss's latest book.
What was that?
Nicole Krauss, a
Okay.
fiction writer. It's
Okay.
called Dark Forest,
Yeah.
and she's a brilliant writer.
Do you draw from reading? Does that spark anything for you? Does that usually prompt you to write when you read, whether it's poetry or fiction? I suppose,
Usually,
right?
usually.
Yeah.
That will sometimes, I practice yoga, and sometimes
Oh, do you?
my teachers will say something that resonates,
Ah,
and I'll draw from that. Or sometimes something one of the kids will say, and I'll draw from that.
yeah,
It's whenever I'm calm enough
yeah,
to be open and receptive.
yeah.
That's when of course that's not every day.
Well, that first poem that you read,
That's right.
even in the reading of it, there was this calm spacing in between what the subject matter wasn't, but the breath work in your reading is kind of yoga-like. seriously, there was a very, you read in a way that
Thank
is
you.
very compelling, that really has this, I called it breath work. There really is this open space in your words and in your lines, the way you read it, and on the page.
Yeah.
So it really opens a space for the reader to sort of come in, or the listener to sort of just rest in the middle of all that. It's really pleasing.
Thank you. I mean, I think music is so important
Yeah.
and integral to poetry. I think sometimes we forget that as we write.
Yeah.
But, I have a background in music. I played an instrument for about 15 years.
What did you play?
I played flute.
Did you
And
really?
piccolo.
I knew it. When I asked the question, what did you play? I thought, it immediately came to my head, flute. I said, I'm not kidding.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
I kind of...
Maybe you saw some of my performances.
Maybe. I channeled it somehow. I don't know. But do you have another poem? Would you like to read another poem for us out of the book?
Sure. Let's see, what can I read? Do you want a Maria poem? Or
Sure.
would you
Yeah,
like,
let's stick with Maria.
stick with
That's the
Maria?
name of the book, yeah.
This is one I really like to read. It's about Maria learning how to sing.
Mm.
So in yoga, at least in Jivamukti practice, we begin each session with a song, usually kirtan, which is chanting, call and response chanting.
Okay.
And this poem begins to reference that. So when I say yogis know how to dive into song, that's
Yeah.
essentially what I'm referencing. Maria sings, yogis know how to dive into song, how it takes more than a handful of minutes for one to enter your bones, how songs carry many beats, high and low, quick and slow, each one a door to enter, as in to access that central part of you, which they say is pure happiness and love. Those doors, I picture them flapping like tongues, strumming and folding, but never closing, and you, your little songbird voice, at first stumbling over the thresholds, then soaring.
Wow. You really have a really nice way of, I guess I'm repeating myself here, but I love the openness in the poems, the spacing in the lines, and it's just, there's something that just resonates with me. I don't know, because of whatever, the energy in it, or some metaphysical thing that's going on there. I think it comes across, and maybe it is because you do yoga, I don't know.
I don't know, or maybe because of all the things I've ever done. And
Where-
some of them will read better than others, for sure.
Where in Long Island are you from?
I'm from South Huntington.
Okay.
Well, I was born in Queens, moved to
Okay.
Levittown, and then South Huntington.
Okay.
Do you know the area?
I'm from Long
Oh,
Island.
you are? What
Oh,
part?
yeah, Suffolk County.
Okay.
When I was born, we were living in Copiague, and then some other
Okay.
towns. I came down here in '66, but I don't want to talk about me.
Okay. I'm just
Do you
curious.
have any poems forthcoming right now in literary? Have you got anything coming out?
I do. I
Where?
have 2 poems coming out in Poetry East.
Mm.
Any day now. I think it's coming out this fall.
Okay.
And they're from a forthcoming collection, which I'm hoping to place in the next year or so. The poems are Little Lemon Tree and The Macaroon, which is all about South Beach.
Cool.
Believe it or not.
What's the name again?
Of the next collection or
Yeah.
the poems. The next collection is now titled My Sweet Atlantis.
Okay.
And we can.
That's a working title. It may or may
It's a
not
working
change.
title.
Yeah.
We'll see who picks it up and when, and if they want to change
Sure.
that. But maybe My Atlantis.
Yeah.
I think Atlantis is there for sure.
A nice ring to it. Nice. Michael, you have any questions? Would you like to ask us something?
Well, you started supporting women writers in Miami.
Mhm.
Do you see the tide turning to where women writers are getting more placement, more respect, more outlets?
Well, I think.
Or basically you had to start your own?
No, I mean, I think that's a good question and it's a fair question. I think the tide is turning. I think it's a big tide and it's turning slowly.
Mhm.
We've been lucky enough to have Vita giving us their count because I think a lot of, whether or not women place poems in journals, there are many reasons. One is that women don't submit as often. I don't know if you've ever seen the essay How to Submit Like a Man. And we read it and we find it hilarious. It's like, the work comes back, they resubmit it. The work comes back, they resubmit it. I mean, women are going to take their work and they're going to say, well, something wasn't right here. Let me go back and let me change this poem. Let me really look at it. And they'll wait 6 months, they'll wait a year, either because, in part because they're more hesitant to send out the work. Another part, not that men's lives aren't busy, but if you're mothering and working, and if you have so many added responsibilities, your amount of time to send out work is just decreased. You know, so for all those reasons. So I think it is changing, but I think it's changing because of the work that, say, Vita has done, and it's made us more conscious. Because sometimes we feel the disparity, but we don't see it. You know, it's difficult to quantify.
Okay.
So, but what Swim is doing, and I think I alluded to this earlier, is that we're not just publishing work by women, but maybe we're publishing work that wouldn't resonate with a male editor. And that's something I didn't anticipate. That people would send us work about riding the city-sanctioned bus with their disabled son, you know, or poems about midlife. That's fantastic. More poems about midlife. That's wonderful.
A poem a day is incredibly ambitious. How are you going with that?
You are absolutely 1,000% correct. It is ambitious. You know, it's like many things. Had we thought it through, had we realized the amount of energy and time, I don't know if we would have done it, but I'm so grateful that we did.
Excellent.
Because it's such a joy to read, as you know, to read good work every day and to see what else is out there. You know, what are people thinking? What are they writing? And
we're easily rejecting 85% of what we see out of hand. So I can't imagine what you're reading, the volume you have to cover to be able to publish that frequently.
well, we just rolled it out 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
So our submissions are now starting to, first it was 1 a day, now it's 3 a day, now it's, it's growing, but I think it'll take some time before we're seeing.
Have you contacted any other women poets to send stuff in for you to take
Oh,
a
yes.
look at? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Sort of, what's the word? Chum the waters.
Oh,
or
absolutely.
whatever.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
solicit when we can. Absolutely, because they're women whose voices we want to profile too. We want to hear them, so we'll ask them to
Do
send.
you think you'd be able to identify? I just thought of this. Do you think you would be able to identify a poem written by a man who put a woman's name on it? You know what I'm? See what I'm getting at? In other words, trying to slip past you. Aha!
It's a good
my name
question.
is. I'm really. It's a man here, and I put Lucille,
and I don't
whatever.
identify as a woman. Well, thank goodness for advanced Google searches. That might be the only way. I'd like to think that I was, that kind of a sleuth that I could look through the language and tell.
Publishing one a day, you may not have time.
Might not have time.
And if it was a really good
We'll
poem
see.
that it really caught your attention and you thought
If
about
it was that good, we just don't. No,
I mean,
I
I'm not
don't
going to
know.
do it.
That would be a great test, actually. 2 months from now, when I'm not looking. Leonor
And if
DellaRocca.
you is this? All right, so I really do. Well, that was a fun question, but I have a real fun question.
Okay.
If you could have any two poets over for dinner, who would they be and why?
Dead or living?
I'm sorry?
Does it matter if they're dead or living?
No.
Oh,
No, I
seven?
suppose if they're dead and you want them in your kitchen.
It's a little morbid.
If,
I mean, I always thought that I would love to have Emily Dickinson over, but
Mhm.
I don't know if she'd speak very much.
you have to get her out of the house.
I might have to go to her house and
Yeah,
make
there you
dinner
go.
and then bring it up to her room.
Yeah.
But I think she would be fun to have at a table with a bunch of people. I
Yeah.
think the expressions on her face would say a lot.
Right.
And I think she dropped some very witty comments to the left and right when I wasn't
No doubt.
looking.
Who would the other one be?
The other one, there's so many. It's hard to pick just one other one, but because of his syntax, I'd like to have E.E. Cummings over.
Oh, wow.
And just see how he would talk to me about the apple pie or the or the macaroni and cheese.
Yeah.
How would he enliven that for me?
That would be interesting.
Or would he
having the
be
two
a
of them around the
complete
table.
bore? I don't know. Yeah, having the two of them around the table, I think, would be even more engaging than having Emily and Walt, because
Yeah.
we kind of know how she felt about him.
Yeah.
But I think she might be intrigued by E.E. Cummings. I mean,
Sure.
who does that with language?
Right.
So few of us can,
Yeah.
And when we try it,
Well,
kind of
I
falls
would
a
like to
little
come
short.
over if you do have that.
Oh, sure. You're more than welcome.
Good enough. At least I'll show up. Well, Catherine, thank you so much. It's been fun, and we look forward to seeing you at the Miami Book Fair on Saturday the
Thank you.
19th, right?
Saturday the 19th.
Thank you so much.
so much. Thank you, Lenny. Thank you, Michael. Okay.